It's amazing, Dan, because Apple, before our very eyes, is transforming from a maker of this into a higher margin, leaner services and cloud business, is it not?
I mean, look, services is the linchpin of growth going forward. I mean, we think $50 billion by 2020, and that was really key in the quarter. I mean, the services beat, but also ASPs. So now what you're seeing is a slow and steady hardware business on the iPhone, but software services, that's sort of that high-octane fuel in the engine.
And let's put that into perspective. Okay, so Apple's main business is obviously the iPhone business, doing about $30 billion a quarter, about $120 to $130 billion a year in revenue. Okay, obviously making it the world's biggest company. Apple's number 2 business, services, is on pace, according to your estimates, to be what would be a top 50 S&P 500 company by itself.
Yeah, we think if it was valued by itself, it's roughly about $400 billion in terms of that services piece. And I think, look, when you think about the $1 trillion
Heck, that'd
market
be a top 20 S&P company.
Look, and that's part of it. And when you talk about the sum of the parts, I think sort of how we get to the $1 trillion plus, and I think we'll get there soon now, is that it's that software services piece with now an iPhone product cycle on the horizon. So really right now for Apple, I think everything's sort of working. And even though China has obviously been overhanging in terms of the tariffs, that 19% growth is key. And that's really going to be key as you go into the coming year in terms on the demand cycle.
They've got us, right? I mean, we're in their halo. If you buy apps, they work on your phone. They work on your Apple TV. You've got your video. You got your family photographs. They play across the Apple spectrum. Once we're there, is anyone leaving?
I mean, it's the halo effect. I mean, that's why 90% plus, you're going to buy another iPhone. And that's why you look at the product cycle coming out, and we have 350 million iPhones in the window of an upgrade opportunity. Street's about 220 million. So you sort of look at it. This was a really good tea leaves going to the demand picture for fiscal 19, and the tech tape that's been, a lot of agita for tech investors, Facebook, Netflix. This was definitely the good news that the street was hoping for.
Okay, but listen, all technology companies are great until they're not. Okay, BlackBerry had like 100% market share for smartphones. Remember Motorola, the StarTAC, right? I'm not comparing to Apple directly to those companies because the services component is very different, but you get my point. There are risks. We just don't see them yet. When you do your analysis, what are the likely risks 5 years from now, 10 years from now to Apple's dominance?
Well, I think the biggest risk is just, lower price competition on smartphone, a product cycle that if you look at it, consumers call it every 2.5, call it 2.8 months. We're upgrading now. That's continuing to stretch out. So if that doesn't happen, Samsung competition increases. They need what's going to be that growth going forward. And that's where, whether it's content, software, services, I think the biggest risk to Apple is on the hardware side. And I think Cook recognizes that, which is why they need to come up with the second, third acts to tap into that ecosystem, which is so key for Apple.
What is that next act for Apple then?
And we think it's content. I mean, ultimately they've had a toe in the water there in the content arms race. You've seen some of the content like Oprah and others that they've brought on. I think a subscription service on the content side is coming up next on the video over the coming year or two. I think that's something that really is going to go into that software services piece, which I think also from a multiple perspective, I think is going to, be something that the street's going to like.
Yeah, big quarter. We are getting really close to that $1 trillion market cap. We're going to hit it soon, aren't we?
I think we hit it. It continues to be ours. Where I think Apple hits it first, then Amazon. And ultimately, it just speaks to it's that hardware, software, the 1-2 punch that gets it over the line to the $1 trillion market cap.